says the last paragraph, again on page 88, but that is not all. There's action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. So we've now had our spiritual awakening, and the greatest promise in all of AA literature is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We now get to carry this message. What message? The message of hope, love, charity, forgiveness, faith. So now we're going to look here and work with others. And we're going to skim this chapter because this is going to give us a recipe of how to do a one-on-one, eye-to-eye 12-step call. I don't know how it is here in Ponca City, but in Tulsa, I know y'all are in District 50, but Districts 30 and 40, we have our central service office there in Tulsa. And for years, we were getting actual calls from alcoholics. The person who had the phone would call a person on the call list, and we would go to people's houses, apartments, hotel rooms, and talk to them about Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes we'd take them to the meetings, and sometimes we'd take them to meetings drunk. And so as a result of that, for some reason, unfortunately, I still take the phones once a month on Sunday nights. We rarely ever get a call anymore for an actual 12-step call. Now we get a call for reference to a treatment center, reference to a recovery house, reference to give a guy a ride to a detox. It seems like that eye to eye has kind of diminished. But at the same time, though, this chapter is important because if you do get that call, you now have a recipe as to how to do it and how to do it properly. Okay, because I was sharing with you with Gail last night that I had an incident that was very dangerous. I won't go into details right now for time's sake, but you're always told to always go on if you go on a 12-step call, never go by yourself. Well, I couldn't find anybody to go with me, so I was spiritual. I was going to take God with me. And I encountered a very dangerous situation because we never know what we're going to encounter or who we're going to encounter or whatever. So the point is, like I said, in this chapter, we're going to read, just kind of skim a little bit as to what to do and what not to do when you have an actual one-on-one, eye-to-eye 12-step call. So let's look at the third paragraph there on that page. It says here, don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You'll be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent that you can learn from them if you wish. But it happens that because of our own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim. So remember, when you're going on, if you do have these calls, that's the first instruction. Okay, is just be yourself and be there for them.
Just a couple of sentences I'd like to point out in that first and second paragraph. There's a couple of things here. It says, you can help when no one else can.
That's right.
You can secure their confidence when others fail. Right? So change it to this. Daniel can help when no one else can. Daniel can secure their confidence when others fail. Right? Or Scott can help when no one else can. Right? Or Galen can secure their confidence when others fail. Or Cindy can help when no one else can. It's personal. Make it personal, right? Because in the next paragraph, this is a sentence. This is an experience you must not miss. We don't have an option. We can help when no one else can. And we must not miss that opportunity. You know?
Exactly.
Okay, Bill. Jim?
Next page, on page 90. Now, this is very important because when you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste your time.
Yep.
There's nothing you can do for him.
Yep.
I mean, remember that show was on A&E for a while called Intervention? That was undoubtedly the biggest bunch of BS I've ever seen in my life. No frothy emotional appeal, no screaming and squalling from kids and grandkids and mommies and daddies or employers. It's going to relieve your alcoholism, period. All that was a marketing tool for a treatment center out in Arizona. And that's all it was. We cannot intervene with anybody. Remember, God is going to give us step one, not us. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So then it says they should be patient, realizing that when you're dealing with a sick person, if there's any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with this person. Most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like to be, how you'd like him to approach you if tables were turned. Then it says again here, don't deal with him if he's very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the point is, when I read that, I'll go back to my very first 12-step call. I was at Central Service in Tulsa, picking up something, and a guy was sitting there named Carl, who was from a home group, and there was a call to make a 12-step call. The secretary asked Carl, said, "Carl, do you have time to go talk to this guy?" "Sure." So he just turned around and says, "Jim, you want to go with me?" I said, "Okay." I was about 6 months sober. Bill and I was going to be Superman. I was going to help somebody. And Carl had this, he talked like Popeye and had a little squinty eye and smoked a cigar, and, you know. We go to a little rat hole apartment, and we walk in. "Did you call AA?" "Yeah." "You don't quit drinking?" "Yeah." "You got booze in the house?" "Yeah." "Pour it out." "Oh, I can't do that." "Come on, Jim, let's go." That was it. He's not ready yet. And then he pointed me out to this sentence: "Don't waste your time, unless they're ready." Okay.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
If you don't want to go into detail, I'll ask you after the meeting. But that top paragraph about if he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste your time to persuade him. My first sponsor said, "Joe, try to save those that are swimming towards the lifeboat, not those that are swimming away from the lifeboat."
Right.
Exactly.
Where does the sponsor draw the line? Is it my job? I've heard both ways, and I got my own opinion, but everybody's got an asshole, sort of. So everybody's got one opinion. But in your experience, where do you draw that line? I mean, do you chase them down? Or, I understand what that says, but what's our responsibility as sponsor?
As a sponsor,
I mean, if you got a guy and you're working with him and you ask him, "Hey, I suggest that you call me, you stay in touch," and he does not. And, you know, somebody told me during this discussion, another AA said, "I hope I don't ever get that sober where I don't call them and kill them."
Well, there's some spiritual laws of caring, right? It's a spiritual program, spiritual principles. There might be some spiritual laws, right? When I talk to a new guy, you know, I say, "Listen, there's some spiritual laws of caring that we go by, right?" And I said one of them is as we enter into this relationship on this journey together, that I give you the right to call me on my shit anytime you want, anytime, any place. But you also in turn give me that same right? In that if you don't care, I don't have to care. But if you do care, that we'll get through this together, right? And then another one is that you will move away from me, I will not move away from you. right? So what that does is puts it in his ballpark. You know, I'm here if he wants to do the work, if he wants to continue this, if he wants to accept, what's the word I want? A commitment, you know, between us. You know, he's got all the information is right there. I'm here if you want to do it, right? And you'll move away from me. And you know, most times, you know, I mean, I don't fire sponsees. They always move away from me.
Yep, exactly.
You know? Now, if you got a guy that keeps going in and out, and comes right straight back to you every time, you know, I would encourage you to pray about it first, but also you can actually say to him, say, listen, you know, Johnny, I don't think that you're getting the message from me. You may need to give somebody else the opportunity. You know what I mean? To give you this message. You know, but don't ever shut the door on him. You know,
Right.
Always make sure that he can call anytime. You know, give him a shout every now and then. You know, even when you know he's out, you can at least pick up the phone. Chances are he's not going to answer. You know, but that's not the deal. The deal is that you've done your part.
That's right.
And until you do your part, you won't feel like you've done your part, and then you'll be chasing people at their job asking why they didn't call.
That's right.
And we don't do that.
And also here from page 90 to 95 said are these actual instructions, okay? But on page 92 said if you're satisfied he's a real alcoholic,
Yep.
begin to dwell on the hopelessness feature of the malady. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition, talked about chapter 3, surrounding the first drink prevented normal functioning of the willpower. Don't at this stage refer to this book, unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. And be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him maybe that's possible. If he's not too alcoholic. Now, the next paragraph, obviously, we talk about the doctor's opinion. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness and fatal malady. Talk about the condition of the mind and body which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your own personal experience. And that's why this is so important to me. In my home group, we have a beginner meeting every Tuesday and Thursday night. Our beginning meeting format is the doctor's opinion, period. A person who is new leaves there knowing what the problem is. Mm-hmm. Because until you know the problem, you'll never know the solution. Okay? So it right here is telling us that even on the first visit maybe, talk to him about the condition of mind and body. Show him the doctor's opinion. Page 91. Let him ask you the question.
93.
Oh, I'm sorry, 93, pardon me. Let him ask you the question, if you will. Tell him exactly what had happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If a man be atheist or agnostic, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than themselves and live on spiritual principles. So there, right there, immediately we're talking about steps 1 and 2. When dealing with such a person, you better use everyday language to describe his spiritual principles. There is no use arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions, which he may already be confused. Don't raise issues no matter what your own convictions are. Don't go into the house carrying a big book and a Bible.
Yep.
And beating them to death with it. That's the last thing they need is more shame and guilt.
Yep.
Okay.
Mind you, all this is after the new guy has come in. We've qualified him. He's in the right meeting. He's in the right place. and we've had a little conversation about him, right? Ask him all the questions you can, see what, right? That's when all this comes in, and the spiritual, when he decides to let you sponsor him. That's when that comes in,
All right.
after you've done all that.
Page 94, first paragraph. Outline the program of action, explaining how you made a self-appraisal, how you straightened out your past, and why you're now endeavoring to be helpful to him. So there you just explain to him about steps 4 through 9 through your own experience. It's important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part of your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you're helping him. Mm-hmm. Make it plain that he is under no obligation to you, that this will help another alcoholic if he escapes his own difficulties. Suggest how important that is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. Make it clear that he is not under any pressure, that he needs to see if he doesn't want to see you again or need to see you again, if he doesn't want to, you should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you've helped him. If your talk is sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you may perhaps have made a friend.
I like this sentence.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. And we're here today, and every meeting I go to, hopefully we can plant a seed. We don't know. Some plant, some water, some harvest. I'll never forget one time when I was still working. I had to be at work I had to get up every morning at 5 o'clock or 4:45. I had to work weekends. It was on a Saturday night, getting ready to go to bed, probably about 9:15, 9:30. Big loud knock on the door. I go to the door, there's a guy that I sponsor, and he'd been working with a guy all day named Leroy. And Leroy was about half drunk. And they come into my house, and the first thing this Leroy says is, "That's the son of a bitch I was telling you about. Every time I drink, all I can hear was that damn doctor's opinion." and I'm going, yeah, it worked. So, yeah. So I said, if we plant a seed, so be it. So.
Or disturb you, knock you off balance, make you think, make you want to see what's going on, right?
Mess up your drinking.
Exactly.
The more hopeless he feels, the better, right? He will be more likely to follow suggestions, right? So the next sentence says, your candidate may give you reason why not need to follow the program. Well, yeah, we're going to hear that. We're going to hear all kinds of things, right? But the bottom line is, the next page, 95, the second to last paragraph, if he is to find God, the desire must come from within.
Exactly.
Right? And then the next paragraph, we have no monopoly on God. We're merely here. We merely have an approach that worked for us, right? Because we tell him what happened to us, we don't tell him about him. Tell him about what happened to us so he can relate to us.
And on page 98, it goes into what we might encounter, which I've encountered numerous times. That second paragraph is not a matter of giving, that's a question, but when and how to give. Some people use AA like a social service agency. Some people will use AA like the Salvation Army or whatever, or try to. But it says here, job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking as long as we place dependence on other people ahead of our dependence on God. Burn the idea into consciousness of every man that he will get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trusts God and clean house. Because, I've said, if a person's not ready, they're not ready. There's people, you might have encountered them here in this clubhouse, who travels the United States using Salvation Armies, AA clubhouses, and next thing you know, they just disappear, and they're in some other town doing the same thing.
So I'd call my sponsor with a problem, right? And the first thing he'd do is he'd say, "Did you pray?"
Yep.
Guess what sound I heard next? Click.
Yep.
Right? Because it says right here, the dependence upon God, not on Daniel, not on my sponsor, right? So either he did two things. He either taught me how to lie, right, and tell him I already did pray, or he taught me how to pray, right?
Then on page 100, top paragraph, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could ever planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances.
Right.
Then on pages 100 and 100 and 100 through 2, it just gives us ideas of how to live out there in that real world, with real people and real situations, what to do in a social situation, what to do. I mean, if you're offered a drink at a party, whatever, okay. But then, though, conclude this chapter. It's on page 103. We're careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience has shown that an attitude is not helpful to anyone.
There it is again.
Their attitude. Every new alcoholic looks for this spirit among us and is immensely relieved when we find that we are not witch burners. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have been saved. But it had not been for such stupidity. Wow. We would not even be the cause of a temperate drinking any good. For not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. Someday we hope the Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public into a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem, but we shall be of little use if our attitude is of bitterness or hostility. Our attitude, wow. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were sure of our own making. Bottles were only a symptom. Besides, we have stopped fighting anything or anybody we have to. Wow. So this is telling me that it gives me a recipe as to what to do and what not to do on a 12-step call. Okay. And I pray that in this area that y'all get more than we do. But the point is, though, it still shows it. So then we're not going to do the wives today. We're not going to do the family afterwards, for time's sake. But I'd encourage you to read that, because by the time we've now had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, and now we get to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And this, to the wives and to the employers and the family afterwards, it shows us how to do that, to practice these principles in all of our affairs outside of AA. Okay. So now we're going to conclude this today on page 151, a vision for you. And to me, I read this chapter because it's not only my past, it's my present, and it's my future. Excuse me. So let's look at this first page here and ask yourself, have I thought this way, just like we did in Bill's story? Have I thought this way, felt this way, or done that?
For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. it is joyous, intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture that great moment of the past. There was that insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, in the heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do so. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. You know, that's me just trying to recapture the good old days, right? You know, because at the end of my drinking career, it wasn't fun anymore. You know, it ran out somewhere back there, right? And I could never recapture.
Says the less people tolerated us, the more people that we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we became subjects of keen alcohol, shivering denizens of this mad realm. Man, this is beginning to sound like Edgar Allan Poe or something. The chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened even blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find such understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did. Then we become oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Remember in Bill's story how he said he drank for oblivion?
Yep.
Yep, I did.
Yep.
And then I'd wake up and there would be those hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand.
Mm-hmm.
Now and then, a serious drinker becomes being dry for a moment, says, I don't miss it at all, feel better, work better, having a better time. Next problem drinker, we smile such a Sally.
Mm-hmm.
We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark, keeping up his spirits. He feels himself inwardly. He would give anything to take a half dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot pursue life without alcohol. Remember, restless, irritable, discontent, without a program. This is what we experience. Someday we will be unable to imagine life with alcohol or without it. Then we'll know loneliness as few do. He will be at the end, the jumping off place. He wish for the end.
This could also be the guy sitting on death row in the back of the clubhouse. Always, oh man, it's great. I love recovery. Oh God, me and God, you know what I mean? These are things that we pick up after a while that somebody is dying on the inside right in front of our face.
That's right. So it says here that we've shown you how we got out from under by working the steps 1 through 11. Mm-hmm. You may say, yes, I'm willing, but am I consigned to be able to have a life where I should be stupid, boring, and glum like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute? Yes, there is a substitute, and it's vastly more than that. It's a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous, and there you will find release and care and boredom and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. Look at this. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead.
Amen.
Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. How does this come about, you ask? Where am I to find these people? Well, you're going to meet these people, these new friends, in your own community. Near you, alcoholics are dying helplessly, like people on a sinking ship. If you live in a large place where hundreds, high and low, rich and poor, future fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous, among them, you'll look at this, make lifelong friendships. You'll be bound to them with new and wonderful ties. You'll escape disaster together, and you'll commit shoulder to shoulder your common journey. Then you will know what it means to give yourself that others may survive and rediscover life. You learn the full meaning of love thy neighbor as thyself. And that's why it's so important to me, is that I have people that I can call today that I've known now over half my life that I met in Alcoholics Anonymous. Friends who I'll be friends with all my life. There's a guy named Steve. He just celebrated 40 years. I'll be 40 here next month. But for some reason, Steve and I met each other in early sobriety, and we're still dear friends. I watched him go through divorces. He watched me go through the death of my wife. I watched him go through a business bankruptcy. He's watched me going through, just hard times. But we're friends for life, period. And that's what this program's all about. Sure. Where are we going to meet these people? Right here. Yeah. Right here. When we meet shoulder to shoulder and do those outside things together. I shared already about what happened to me back in January. When my companion, the lady who I was getting ready to propose to, had a heart attack on a ship. I was down in Galveston by myself. I didn't know anybody in Galveston. But an AA member in Tulsa saw what I'd posted on Facebook. He called an AA member in Galveston. And for 4 hours, I couldn't get any sleep. My phone was literally blown up by Galveston AA, wanting to help me. Never met me in my life. One couple was offering to drive me back to Tulsa. A 9-hour drive. They didn't care. That's the hand of AA.
Yep.
So it just really, to this day, I'm still amazed by it. So anyway.
All right. It may seem incredible that these men are to become happy. Oh, that's nice. Mm-hmm. Respected. Wow, there's something that wasn't happening. Right? And useful. There's something else wasn't happening. How can they rise out of such misery, bad repute, and hopefulness? Well, that's where I was. The practical answer is that since these things have happened among us, they can happen to you. Should you wish them above all else and be willing to make use of our experience, we are sure they will come. The ages of miracles are still with us. Our own recovery proves that.
That to me is a step 12 promise.
Yeah. Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched out on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions. Many are sure will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city, havens for those who must find a way out. This book got transported around the country, in the mail, and a lot by salesmen, right? Traveling salesmen. They would call or write into New York and get addresses of guys on the way that they're going toward Iowa or Utah, whatever, and they'd stop and 12-step them. And then those guys would start meetings in their community, and that's how it all came around.
That's right.
I was told that AA came to Austin in a briefcase by a reporter for the newspaper.
That's right. And also the fact is, here now on page 152, 153, that bottom paragraph where it talks about, we're not going to say, remember this chapter is about our history, our past, our present, and our future. Well, in this next pages, we're going to talk about a little bit about our history. And it talks about here how AA started. That years ago in 1935, one of our number, Bill Wilson, made a journey to a western city. From a business standpoint, his trip came off badly. Had he been successful in his enterprise, he would have been set on his feet financially, which at that time seemed vitally important. But his venture wound up in a lawsuit and bogged down completely. The proceedings was shot through with much hard feelings and controversy. Bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak and sober just a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk to someone, but whom? Okay, now remember, Bill Wilson was sober 6 months. And Bill Wilson had been trying his best to get people sober through the Oxford groups. And he would literally pull people off bar stools and take them to Oxford group meetings and preach the spiritual, and did preach and preach and preach about the spiritual. But no one was staying sober. So Dr. Silkworth said, why don't you show people what I showed you, the problem and the solution of the problem of alcoholism with the physical allergy to alcohol, with a mental obsession. If they can buy that, then you talk to them about the spiritual, okay? So here he was in Akron, Ohio, had gone there on a business venture. Turned out that it was a company that was vulcanizing white wall tires, because Akron being the rubber company, or the rubber capital of the world, basically. He was going there with a group of people to try to buy this company. Well, naturally, as we read here, it bogged down, okay? So bitterly discouraged, he found himself in a strange place, discredited and almost broke. Still physically weak and sober a few months, he saw that his predicament was dangerous. He wanted so much to talk to someone, but whom? One dismal afternoon, he paced the Mayflower Hotel. He placed himself at a hotel lobby, wondering how his bills were going to be paid. At one end of the room stood a glass-covered directory of local churches. Down the lobby, he had a door open into an attractive bar. He could see the gay crowd inside, and there he would find companionship and release. Unless he took some drinks, he might not have the courage to scrape up an acquaintance and would have a lonely weekend. Of course, he wouldn't drink. But why not sit, hopefully at the table, a bottle of ginger ale before him? After all, had he not been sober 6 months now, perhaps he could handle up to 3 drinks, no more. Fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, it was owed in the city's insanity, that first drink. With a shiver, he turned away and walked down the lobby. The church directory. Music and gay chatter still floated to him from the bar. I've had the opportunity now to go to Akron twice. 20 years ago, and then last year I went again. 20 years ago, you could go into the lobby of the Mayflower Hotel. But now, though, because the Mayflower Hotel is now a senior citizen complex, and for security, they no longer will let you in. But 20 years ago, you could say you're an AA member, and they would let you in the lobby. And I got to have the opportunity to walk on what I called hallowed ground. I got to go to that phone booth. They still have a replica of a 1935 phone. And on the church directory, he found, well, he was making calls and saying he was a rum hound from New York, wanting somebody to talk to. Well, these ministers, they said, what? Huh? You're what? But anyway, he found Reverend Tunks. He liked that name because in Vermont, where he was raised, the word tunk was kind of a slang term for something. So he called Reverend Tunks. And Reverend Tunks had a friend named Henrietta Seiberling, who was also a member of the Oxford movement that Bill had been involved with. And he suggested that Bill call her. So he did. And there was a doctor in town that was also a member of the Oxford movement. And he had admitted into one of their meetings that he had a problem with alcohol. So Henrietta Seiberling made arrangements for these two guys to meet, this rum hound from New York named Bill and a doctor named Bob, to meet at the gatehouse of the Hewitt Mansion the Hewitts, they were the founders of Goodyear Rubber. And so they arranged for them to meet in the gatehouse of the Hewitt mansion. And turns out that the gatehouse was basically the servants' quarters, where the gardeners and the maids stayed or whatever. And that was the day before Mother's Day, 1935. So Dr. Bob came home drunk and gave Ann, his wife, a plant. And she told Henrietta Seiberling that we can't meet today because he's more potted than
the plant.
than the plant. He's passed out under the piano. So he agreed to meet with this guy named Bill from New York the next day at the gatehouse of the Hewitt mansion. He said, I'm going to give this guy 15 minutes. That 15 minutes turned out to be 5 hours. Because for the first time in Dr. Bob's life, he heard somebody talking to him about alcoholism, not talking to him, or not talking about him, but talking to him, where he could relate to another alcoholic. I had the opportunity back a year ago, September, to go back to the Hewitt mansion. And I'm sharing this personally, my own personal thing. It was impossible to be an atheist agnostic. When you walk in the gatehouse of that mansion, I felt the presence of something. You call it God, you call it the Holy Spirit, you call it whatever you want to. But when we're two guys, a stockbroker from New York and a rectal surgeon from Akron, Ohio, meet for the first time. And here we are today, April 13th, 2025, almost 90 years later. Well, I encourage each one of you, if you can, to go to the International Convention that's coming up in Vancouver in July. I've had the opportunity to go to many international conferences. And when I'm sitting in a stadium with 65 or 70,000 people from all over the world, and the Friday night ceremony, opening ceremony, is equal to the Olympic ceremony, of all the flags from all the countries represented. The last one we had was in Atlanta in 2015. We didn't have one in 20 because of COVID. But in Atlanta, 94 countries represented. And we see the flag ceremony, and we see Israel, Iran, and Iraq all waving their flags and all hugging each other. Wow. When you're sitting there or standing there after the meeting, holding hands, saying the Lord's Prayer, with a person you have no idea what language they're speaking. But we're speaking the language of the heart. Wow. To me, there is no way to describe it. So the point is, like I said, though, as we said here, we read this on page 155, and we just explained this. It's called The Clergyman led him presently to a certain resident of the town, Dr. Bob, who, though had formerly been able and respected, he was nearing the nadir of alcoholic despair. Is the usual situation: home in jeopardy, wife ill, children distracted, bills in arrears, standing damaged. He was in a desperate desire to stop, but saw he was no way out, for he had earnestly tried many avenues of escape. Painfully aware of being somewhat abnormal, the man did not fully realize what it meant to be alcoholic. Now remember, Bill Wilson was the first person that we know of that knew the problem through Dr. Silkworth, the physical allergy to alcohol with a mental obsession, and the solution through the Oxford movement. So he knew the problem and the solution. Dr. Bob, who was also a member of the Oxford movement, knew the problem, but didn't know what the solution was. He knew the solution, but didn't know what the problem was. He had been pounded in his head, it's all about sin. It's all about willpower. But then, though, this guy from New York comes and talks to him about the physical allergy to alcohol and a mental obsession. And he bought it. Wow. Maybe there's hope for me too. So it says here, when a friend related his experience, like we just talked about, Bill didn't talk about Dr. Bob, he talked about himself. When our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. He told how he lived in constant worry about who might find out about his alcoholism. He had, of course, the familiar alcoholic obsession that few knew of his drinking. Why, he argued, should he lose the remainder of his business only to bring still more suffering to his family by foolishly admitting his plight to people from whom he made his livelihood? He would do anything, he said, but that. Being intrigued, he invited our friend to his home. Now remember, this was in May of 35. Bill Wilson did not go back to New York until October. Why? Because we're going to look here on the next page.
One morning he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking. Stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went out, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business. At midnight he came home exhausted, but very happy. He has not had a drink since. As we shall see, he means a great deal to his community, and the major liabilities of 30 years of hard drinking have been repaired in 4. Yeah, so that's Dr. Bob going out and doing some amends and getting right with all these people, even in fear that, it might have been called Alcoholics Anonymous because everybody was doctors, lawyers, judges, and preachers, and people couldn't keep their professions if everybody knew, So he was in fear of his business and all that too. So, but he went out and he did it, and he found out that most people knew he was already drunk. Go figure, But how often did I think that everything was just fine and nobody knew nothing, right? Come to find everybody was tore up from the floor up, just as bad as I was or worse, just because I was the one drinking, Go ahead.
On page 159, well, actually, let's go back just one page. So Bill and Bob, they said they get together and realize that the necessity for one drunk to talk to another drunk. Mm-hmm. Dr. Bob called the nurse there at the hospital where he worked and said, "Do you have any drunks there?" "Yep, we do."
Yes, we got a crocker.
We got a corker.
Corker?
Yep. So anyway, it turned out that we know this is the story of Bill Dotson. And so many times we hear people think about AA as people just off the street. Well, I tell them that AA was started by a stockbroker, a doctor, and an attorney. People who had never been on the street. In fact, Bill Dotson, he had been, at one time, been on the city council of Akron. But he was an alcoholic. Okay. But then so Bill and Bob, they help Bill Dotson get sober. And on page 158, to me, it's a very important sentence that in the third paragraph, this is Bill Dotson. Mm-hmm. That afternoon, he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital a free man. He entered the political campaign, making speeches, frequenting men's gatherings, places of all sorts, often staying up all night. He lost the race by only a narrow margin. But please look at this next sentence. But he found God, and finding God, he found himself.
Amen.
That was in June of 35. He's never drank again. He's been a respected and useful member of his community. He's helped other men recover and is a power in the church from which he was long absent. So now we're looking at the future. Okay, of the past. We've looked at our present, and now let's go look here at our future of what can happen to us. Okay. So as they continued to grow in Akron, a couple named Clarence Williams and his wife, they had a house about 4 blocks from Dr. Bob. They opened their house up to help. They were members of the Oxford movement. They saw what happened to Dr. Bob. And so they opened their house up. And then at the same time, about this time, the Firestones, they're in Akron. They're Goodyear Rubber, the Firestone Rubber Company. But the Firestones, they had a son who was a very bad alcoholic. And he got involved in the Oxford movement and even went with them on a train to Denver for some big Oxford revival, I guess you can say. And he comes back 2 weeks later, and he gets off the train, and immediately his parents see something different about him. And his comment was, "I found the Lord." And so as a result, the Firestones, they also became involved in the Oxford movement, the Oxford groups. And they started renting out rooms, or the ballroom of the Mayflower Hotel, because the Williams house was getting too big. And so they were having people come in there, and that's just where the speaker meeting started. People would come in there from all over, friends and families of alcoholics, and they would hear people speak about what God's done in their life. Well, anyway, so that started, and then I said on page 161, this is still talking about the Williams house. Now, this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors for the number 60 or 80 as a rule. Alcoholics are being attracted from near and far, from surrounding towns. Families drive long distances to be present. A community 30 miles away, which is Cleveland, a community 30 miles away has 15 fellows members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Being a large place, we think that someday its fellowship will number many hundreds. Okay, now this next paragraph, I want us to think about this. And I'm going to read this so we can understand it. But life among alcoholics is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals. Cleaning up old scrapes, helping to settle family differences, explaining the disturbed son to his irate parents, lending money, securing jobs for each other when justified. These are everyday occurrences. Not one is too discredited or is sunk too low to be welcomed cordially if he means business. Now please listen to this next sentence. Social distinctions, petty rivalries, and jealousies are left out of countenance. Now this next sentence, please listen. Being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored under and united under what?
One God.
One God. Wow. Here it is throughout the book. God as you understand him. God as you understand him. 3 pages before the text ends, hidden in that one little paragraph. One God. Wow. See what Bill does in his writing? It's a hook. to get you to God, period. And that's all it is. But see how it's hidden, though, in that one little paragraph? That one sentence? So now we've seen the past. We've seen our present, being united under one God. But now let's look at our future. Look on page 162. At the top of that page says 6 years ago, one of our number was a patient there at the hospital. Many of us have felt for the first time the presence and the power of God within its walls. We are greatly indebted to the doctor, which is Dr. Bob, in attendance. Therefore, for he, although it might perish his own work, had told us of his belief and ours. Now remember, Dr. Bob, by this time, had treated thousands and thousands of alcoholics. He got an administrator, a nurse named Sister Ignatia, to help him. Because back then, an alcoholic could not be admitted just for alcoholism. They had to be admitted for stomach flu, the flu, a virus, whatever. And she was instrumental in doing that. And so then when Dr. Bob they go to that ward. What number was the ward?
390.
What's the number of the ward?
Check.
390.
There you go.
Oh, Jeff, are you here, Jeff? Oh, hell. Yeah.
So, ward number 390. There were some fast friendships. There was in the same helpfulness to one another, as you find among our Western friends. There's a bit of travel east and west, and we foresee a great increase in this helpful knowledge. Okay, now look at the last sentence of this paragraph, of this page. Now this is our future. Thus we grow, and so can you. Though you may be one man with this book in your hand, we believe with hope it contains all you need to begin. I share this that we know Joe of Joe and Charlie. Joe had a passion for what was called the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. He went to his home group in Tulsa and asked if they could start a big book study. And it was voted down in the group conscience because they said that you studied the big book with your sponsor, not as a group. So he and his wife Phyllis left and started a group with a book in their hand. That's it. They started with a set of Joe and Charlie tapes. And that's how the meeting started, listening to Joe and Charlie's tapes through this big book. The second year, the word had got around so much. The second year, somebody was celebrating a 1-year birthday every week for a year. That group continued to grow. There's now groups in Fairfax, Virginia, who use the format of the original West Side group in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's a group in Tempe, Arizona that uses the format of original West Side in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It started with one man with a book in his hand. That's what you can do also. Some people do not like what we're reading here today. I have no idea why. Some groups do not like to read the big book. But the point is, though, you can be one person with this book in your hand And you can start and start and start and do this miraculously and watch the lives change as you take a person as a group through this book. And at the same time, you find new sponsors or you find new sponsorees, and it continues to work. It works if you want it. What Daniel and I have done here this weekend is showing you what's in this book. And that's all we can do. What you do with it is now totally up to you. And if your group doesn't like to study this as a group, start one. I mean, start a group. You're not obligated to, but the point is though, if you choose to, do that. But anyway, on 164, it says here in the first paragraph, still you may say, but I will not have the benefit of the contact of you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is upon Him. Mm-hmm. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. That's our future. Now here it is, these next two paragraphs, I'm going to ask that we repeat this in unison, okay? As we conclude this. It says here, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose to you. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something that you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass to you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. You shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will meet some of us as we trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Ow! Whoa! We're done. Ow!
That's it. Nice.
God bless you, people. God bless you. Wow.
But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. You know what that is? It's love. Companionship. Grace.
Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Step 3, admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Step 4 and 5, clear away the records of your past. Give freely what you find and join us. Step 12. God bless you, people.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you for allowing us to come here today. Thanks for calling Jim and inviting us out. Jim, thanks for dragging me along.
No kidding. Thank you
Thank you, guys.
No kidding.